Hi there, my name is Andrea, and this is High Literature, a program where I introduce stories and art to you, the viewer. I'm very, very tired. It is National Poetry Month this month, and I got this book of poetry. Poetry is something that, like, when I was a kid, I liked it, and up to like middle school, but I liked it in like the, you know, like Dr. Seuss and stuff like that. It wasn't something that I was super passionate about and never really developed a keen interest in. So, yeah, it's definitely a subject that I probably explored the least. I think the most poetry I read was, when I was in junior high and high school, and the literature books that you would get, there were these poetry sections, and I enjoyed it, but not enough to really like dive into it the way I did books and comics. Um, but there's this collection of vampire erotica, and there's this story in here that just always especially stood out to me. And when I was revisiting this book last year, I was curious about finding more work by this person, Danielle Willis, and I found this collection of poetry, Dogs and Lingerie, and it is wild. The I know this is kind of a weird thing to point out, but I love the very first page. It's hard to see, but it's very textured. I just love like the look of it, and it's like the most intense cross-hatching you could possibly imagine, but I just love it. And here's the illustrations in this book are awesome. Here's the dog in lingerie. Love it. There's this other, the story that I loved is called The Gift of Neptune, and it's about this like carnival sideshow that has a mermaid and a vampire in it. And when I saw this picture, it was just so cool seeing this for the first time after, I first read that story when I was like 14, and I got this book last year, and it was just wild seeing that picture. Let's see. Bambi Lake, 1990. And yeah, there's just drawings all throughout this book. Most of them I can't show. This is a very, very adult-oriented collection of poetry. Let's see. So I'll be reading the tamer ones. This one's called Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga chews bones in her chicken-footed hut, deep in the forest where the thorn bushes bear fruit like blood blisters, and grows older and more bent by the year. The bones rattle in her cupboard, and her mind is so sharp she remembers who the tiniest phalange came from, and how good or bad their marrow tasted outside, or how good or bad their marrow tasted. Outside, the wolves and the ghouls are whining for offal, and Baba Yaga tugs at the knots of her hair with a comb made of wire and ravens' beaks, and listens to the heartbeat in the walls. It's just, oh my god, I love it. I remember the first time I read about the Baba Yaga, it was actually in a Forgotten Realms book. Elaine Cunningham's Daughter of the Drow. There's this berserker warrior who's lost control of his powers, and he's on this quest to try and figure out how to regain control again. And at one point, like his introduction, I think in this book, he's searching for the Baba Yaga and he finds her. And the way the chicken hut's described it's just, it's such a cool book. It's such a great scene. But yeah, this book of poetry, it also has short stories in it. And I was, so in this book, The Gift of Neptune, in this book, the story's also in this collection. So it just made me so happy. It's like I have 2 copies of it. Let's see here. The Queen's Consorts. You tell me about jailhouse princes languishing in exile on green heroin islands where the oceans teem with blind fish and the wrecks of Spanish galleons, and you say you've gotten used to the idea that most of your boyfriends are going to be junkies. DOA, and then in parentheses, Disneyland on acid, for John Ayers, one of the happiest people on earth. Bob and I are at the Tomorrowland cafeteria because we're on acid, and Bob is convinced that if we don't eat something, we're going to die. And I keep telling him I'm not hungry, but his eyes are black and glossy, and with the terrible conviction that we must eat or perish. So we order 2 Magic Kingdom burgers and wend our way through the melting plasticine crowd to a mustard-smeared table beneath the neon Moon Burger sign, where I discover that my burger has been impregnated with a vile orange sauce that reminds me of when I was 6 years old and saw a gorilla eat its own vomit at the Seattle Zoo. So I try to scrape it off, but it gets all over my hands, and I start giggling hysterically because it's moving around on my fingers, and Bob is furious that I'm laughing at the food, and I'm laughing at the food that is going to save my life. So I try to make the remains of the burger presentable by folding it in half, which doesn't work and causes people with small children to stare at us while Bob screeches, "What are you doing? What the fuck are you doing?" over and over again as I proceed to fold the burger into 4ths and 8ths and then slam the styrofoam container shut in disgust. Bob is about to force me to eat the rest of his burger when suddenly there is a burst of top 40 music and a bandstand in the shape of a futuristic jukebox rises from the patio floor, and a Sheena Easton clone in a gold lame jumpsuit launches into a terrifying rendition of Eddie Brickell and the New Bohemians' "What I Am is What I Am" that sends us fleeing to the submarine voyage where we stand in line fixing our shifting makeup and watching the Matterhorn turn into a gnashing skull. Oh my god. It's just this book. Breakfast in the Flesh District. The ghosts are rising over the faded marquee of a boarded-up strip club on Turk Street. Ancient girls with chipped blonde faces and voices clattering like pigeons over the heads of naga-hide-skinned men sucking coffee through the flat brown donkey's teeth, while exhausted Vietnamese housewives trundle past with their shopping carts, and the early morning hookers pace back and forth in front of cafes, hoping the Johns won't mind the stubble pushing up through their ruined makeup. No one in this neighborhood gives a shit about ghosts. They're as common as lunatics and half as obtrusive, hanging in the air thin and yellow as nicotine, while dogs bark on top of piles of garbage, and fat women in clown suits juggle bottles of night train and spit teeth at anyone who stops to watch here. Ectoplasm is just another thing you cough out of your lungs at 8 in the morning. Emily and I are having breakfast at the Bon Ami wearing 24 hours of makeup and still seeing tracers out of the corners of our eyes. We're the only ones paying attention to the ghosts pressed against the fly-specked windows, while the waitress who can't speak English calls us sweetheart and brings us the wrong food. We're talking in the vivid half-sentences of the recently brain-damaged, brilliant chemical insights oxidizing in the greasy Formica sunlight. Danielle Willis was kicked out of Barnard in 1986 and has since worked as a nanny, poodle groomer, stripper, and dominatrix. Her play, The Methadrine Dollhouse, which is in this book, was produced at Exit Theater in 1989. This is her 3rd book of poetry. And when I read that, it just cracked me up because in this book, where I first read the story that introduced me to her, the editor of this collection of short stories, Poppy Z. Bright, who's now Billy Martin, it says, born at the peak of the 60s, Poppy has worked as a gourmet candy maker, an artist model, a mouse caretaker, and an exotic dancer. And I wonder if, I mean, it just, right? It just tickled me so much. But yeah, this is going to be a short video because I'm exhausted and I have to get up super, 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 super early tomorrow. So good night, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.